Mr. Dixon, earlier in the hearing, you said that one of your priorities is to make sure that there is appropriate separation at the FAA between business issues and safety issues. I was struck by that. It's a very important point. Given that you said that, I take it you believe that there has not always been sufficient separation between business and safety considerations. Is that a fair?
Well, I was actually referring to the manufacturer. I was referring to Boeing, and the indications of pressure on the workforce to accomplish certain things, and being able to make sure that that didn't impact safety decisions. And it's something that I want to make sure doesn't bleed over into our workforce.
Well, exactly. I mean, I'm concerned also about pressure on the FAA because, here's something that those of us here who have looked at this feel seems to be happening, that a manufacturer like Boeing will begin production of an aircraft. They will complete all the steps up to the finalizing production, including ordering materials, before getting FAA permissions. Then they'll say, oh my gosh, if the FAA raises a concern, they'll say, oh my gosh, we have to get, we're almost there. We'll lose a tremendous amount of money if we don't get this plane into the marketplace. And then the FAA sometimes seems to take that into account. I mean, isn't that potentially what happened, for example, when the FAA initially said that flight simulator training would be required for the 737 MAX, and then Boeing said, we have this agreement with Southwest Airlines. We were promised $1 million rebate per plane if it didn't require flight simulator training, and then the FAA says, okay, you don't have that requirement. I mean, do you think it may have bled into, those business concerns may have bled into the FAA's decision there?
I know, having spoken with our AEG pilots in Seattle, and having read some of what their concerns have been that have been expressed to the committee investigative staff, that this was an item of concern that they had from very early on in the project. And so they were very engaged from the very early days, and went through a process of over a year of making sure that pilots from airlines were brought in, that those who are flying the 737NG on a regular basis were able to have proficiency even without additional simulator training on the 737 MAX. So that was something that was of concern and that was resolved through the process, but it is something that we need to watch for, absolutely.
And what about the decision to exempt Boeing from requirement that new commercial airlines be equipped with the ICAS system that would allow the aircrew to prioritize all the different cautions and alerts that they received? I mean, that system was required on the 747-400, the 757, the 767, the 777, the 787 MAX. The 737 MAX is the only aircraft that was not required, that was exempted from that rule, I think, since 1982. Weren't there cost considerations that factored into that decision?
It's a great question. In my view, it wasn't so much of a cost consideration, but how do you integrate an airplane like that into an existing fleet? And I'll let Mr. Lawrence tell you how that process works.
So the question on that particular one is, we have a very large fleet and operators of that existing aircraft, and if you change the procedures and the positioning and the switches and the information, do you introduce another safety hazard? And so that was the debate on that particular system. It wasn't as much of a cost per se. It was looking at, you have Southwest Airlines as an example, within a whole existing 737 fleet. You have all their pilots trained, all their maintenance folks trained, the whole system built on that. And what are the risks of introducing a new system that dramatically changes that. So it's a debate. We're not saying it's, you know, that there aren't good arguments on both sides of that discussion. Just saying that it is a discussion and making those determinations of whether you're going to allow an aircraft to continue in that fleet in its existing configuration. Those are all part of the discussions. And safety is the driver in all of those discussions.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen. Representative Allred.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to pick up on the line of questioning of Representative Lamb's around accountability. Mr. Administrator, as you know, the 737 MAX was certified with the AOA disagree alert being a standard feature on the aircraft. However, in August 2017, Boeing learned that the AOA disagree alert was not functioning on an estimated 80% of the entire 737